Are we all ready? Okay. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
That is what I'm talking about. So it's Friday. I know it's Labor Day weekend, but we are here to make sure that all of our Connecticut children have access to quality educational experiences. So my name is Gwen Samuel, first and foremost. I'm a mom. I have children in the Meriden Public School system, but I'm also the founder and the president of the Connecticut Parents Union. And for the record, I want to be very clear. When it comes to children, I don't negotiate. When it comes to their safety, I don't negotiate. And I'm hoping as we work together this evening that there is a consensus that when it comes to children, we will do whatever it takes to ensure their education and overall well-being. With that being said, I would like to go around the table briefly to introduce ourselves, and then we will talk about why we're here and jump right in. So we have this awesome young man to our left down there. Would you like to introduce yourself? And if you can tell me your name and what school you attend. I would love to hear it, please.
My name is Nazir and I go to Kinsella.
All right, what grade are you in?
6.
6? Well, congratulations, 6th grade. High five to the middle school.
Right.
All right. All right, young lady.
My name is Julia. I go to Kinsella, and I'm in 6th grade too.
Okay, 2 middle schoolers, young lady.
My name is Nyesha and I go to Kinsella and I'm in the 1st grade.
1st grade?
Nice.
Congratulations to the 1st grade.
I'm Tasha. I had 2 grandkids, one of them second and one of them preschool.
All right, shout out to grandmas. That's what I'm saying. High five over here. All right, young lady.
Hello, my name is Rachel Sloffer. I work with the Pacific Legal Foundation, Director of Outreach. I don't have any children of my own, but
Stability.
And you're a taxpayer, so yes, you do.
Yeah, something that I care very deeply about, so I'm excited to be here.
Hi, my name is Athena Wagner, and I am an education advocate and community activist. I'm from Waterbury, and I work with Gwen Samuel in Connecticut Parents Union as the outreach coordinator.
Hi, I'm LaShawn Robinson. I'm a mother of 5, and I advocate for education in Hartford.
Hello, my name is Natalie Langles. I have 1 son in the 5th grade at Rawson, and I am an advocate for parents and children.
Hi, my name is Valerie. I'm a parent of 4 kids and 6 grandkids. And I am very proud of my kids.
All right. Own that space. Okay. Yeah. I already introduced myself, so we'll keep going.
Hi, my name is Terry Morrison, and for the past 30 years, I've raised about 13 children in the city of Hartford who have all attended Hartford Public Schools. I'm also a former Board of Trustees member for CRT and Policy Council Chair.
All right.
Hi, my name is Councilwoman Arjo Winch. I serve on the Hartford City Council and chair the Labor and Education Committee. I'm a mother of a Hartford Public High School graduate and the grandparent of 2 magnet school students. Happy to be here. And also host of All Politics is Local and Get Hip and Get a Grip on accesstv.org.
All right. They better get a grip on our kids, don't they? Okay, I'm just saying.
If they ain't gonna get me, I'll say that one.
I'm Oliver Dunford. I'm an attorney with the Pacific Legal Foundation. We're from California, and we're representing LaShawn and her family against the state of Connecticut, and we're very happy to be here.
Joshua Thompson, also representing LaShawn, attorney with Pacific Legal Foundation. I have 2 children, neither of them at school age yet, but very grateful to be here and very happy to be able to advocate and fight for LaShawn and her 3 great kids. 5 great kids, but 3 here today.
Hi, I'm Wen Thaw. I'm also an attorney with the Pacific Legal Foundation representing LaShawn. I don't have any children, so no kids in school.
But you pay taxes, so yes, you pay.
Exactly. I pay taxes, and I care very deeply about this issue and fighting for LaShawn and all of the clients who we represent and all of the children in Connecticut and across the country.
Thank you so much for that.
My name is Scott Barton. I work with Pacific Legal Foundation as well. I'm not an attorney, but my job is to tell the stories of people like LaShawn and her family who are faced with injustice.
Thank you so much for that. So again, thank you everyone. So when I organized this meeting, number one, I had a conversation with LaShawn Robinson, a mom I've known for some years. But I also thought instead of just talking about the lawsuit, we need to talk about we are in back to school season. And we must remember it's more than book bags and pigtails. It's about school safety as well and education justice. And so I thought that it was important that we talk a little bit about school safety, just so that we as parents and community leaders are saying that we make sure that all of our children in Connecticut schools today are accessing safe schools, quality schools, and that are putting the needs of our children first. And that also means as we as parents must take responsibility for our children. I'm very clear with this, that it's not about what other people are going to do for us, for our children, it's what we are going to do for our children. We are working with elected officials, right? But they work for us. It's an election year and school safety is on the table. One of the things I want to talk about are MOUs. These are memorandums of understanding and agreements. I have a document that I passed out that I came across in 2014. So I have a high school student that had a fight in school. I don't mind talking about it. It was her first fight. And I learned from Senator Winfield, he's a senator out of New Haven, about something called memorandums of understandings. And these are agreements between school resource officers, local police departments, and local school districts. So I reached out to my school district because I wanted to understand the roles of police in our schools. And I was very disturbed by the document that I have here, because the state law in 2015 states that there must be a memorandum of agreement or understanding with every local school district that has school resource officers and police departments. Yet, I've only been able to find 4 or 5 agreements, but yet we have school resource officers across the state of Connecticut. And we have over 1,000 schools within the state of Connecticut. And if we're not clear about the roles of police officers, we will continue to have disproportionate suspension and expulsions of Black and brown children, to include preschool through 2nd grade. Even though the law states that you cannot suspend kindergarten, pre-K through 2nd grade. There was a report from the State Department of Education last year that stated we suspended over 1,600 pre-K through 2nd grade. Out of 1,600, 1,100 of them were Black and Hispanic children, which is 71.6%. We need to know the roles and responsibility of everyone in the school, because babies are entrusting us as adults to make informed decisions on their behalf. So I'm encouraging us in Hartford. I heard that Hartford doesn't have school resource officers. I think you have security guards. So if you have security guards, the questions are, what are the agreements? What are the roles and responsibility of them in our school? And so as parents, we should want to know. Because when my daughter had a fight, some girls wanted to jump her. She defended herself, but she was the only one in trouble. Welcome to the real world. It happens all the time, but I want to be an informed parent. I want to make sure that when I make decisions on her behalf, I have the information to do so. But if I don't know what your role is as a police officer, what is the role of a principal, what is the role of a school security guard, especially if they have the power to take your child's freedom away. Especially if they have the power to give your baby a criminal record as young as 5 years old. So I would encourage parents to take a look at this document. We can revisit this conversation. But again, the Connecticut Parents Union will be requesting memorandums of agreement from every school district that has a school resource officer. Because if you're not clear on your role, how can we ensure that your call is a just call?
I would like to address that,
Yes,
that
ma'am.
issue.
Thank you.
I'm a former employee of Weaver High School, and as an employee of Weaver High School, I had an office on the 1st floor. Our building housed 3 schools.
And I worked for the Culinary Arts Academy, and I just had a son that was in the Journalism and Media Academy. We had a police officer who was a school resource officer who was paid by Hartford Police Department, and we also had security guards. One of my concerns was if a child got suspended for an event or a situation, they should not also be punished by the law. It should either my advocacy was, first and foremost, my son was put in handcuffs and brought to my office. And I let my school resource officer know that she was out of bounds with her client. Because right now I'm in a work position and I don't know how many mothers you can bring their children to their office in handcuffs. And so I had her written up, I talked to my boss, and I was adamant about it because you're interfering with my work process. And any other parent has the opportunity to travel to her office, which she has in a private part of the building, where she holds people who she has in handcuffs. And I wasn't given that same respect just because I worked on the premises. And this was in high school. And then my son was not arrested, he was given a ticket. So that could have just been rectified another way. So my experience was that they misused their power, and you have to decide either you're going to arrest my son and give him a ticket to go to court or you're going to suspend him. I would not agree to a double punishment because there was no weapon or violence involved.
Right.
It was just all verbal. So as parents, when you look at their different descriptions, the school resource officer is the police officer, but the security guard is under school jurisdiction.
And that's important to know because there is a list. So on the second page, and then we're going to continue on, we can revisit this conversation. Like I said, we have over 1,000 schools in the state of Connecticut. So when I look up this document, it says a MOU, which means a Memorandum of Understanding, or MOA, a Memorandum of Agreement. It's an agreement. And it says local police departments and school districts often sign an agreement, a MOU or MOA, that outlines the school resource officer's job description. These agreements help prevent conflicts or assignments outside the scope of the school resource officer's duties as sworn police officers. Again, we have over 1,000 schools. And let's just say 300 or 400 of them have school resource officers because between the Sandy Hook shooting, there have been a lot of changes in school safety. Yet on this list, there's only 8 listed. Berlin, Bridgeport, Cromwell, Fairfield, Farmington, Hartford, Manchester, Meriden, New London, Newtown, South Windsor, Torrington, Waterford, and Wyndham. There's only a handful of agreements here. But even out of that, what concerns me the most is when it asks the questions about SRO assignments, some of this assignments, like Hartford, specific assignments unclear. You can't have the power to arrest somebody's child and you are unclear about the role you play. Right. And so we need to want to know specifically, right? You cannot be unclear. When we get police records, they keep police records. Right? And these records follow your child. Don't let I was taught it for the rest of their lives. We don't get passes of things sealed. Things are not as sealed as they say with all the shootings that have occurred. Because now they're looking at mental health issues. Right? But that's why it's important that parents step up their game and know what's happening in their schools. If your child's a bully at home, you got to wonder if the child's a bully at school. If your child is being bullied and you say nothing, then you are part of the problem. And these kids are waking up traumatized, thinking they're sick, all these things because they're traumatized with bullying. So all I'm saying is we need to be clear on the roles and responsibilities of law enforcement in our school. Because if they have the power to take your freedom away, as far as I'm concerned, you're talking about grown folks. Yes. You're not talking about babies. So we have to hold the state of Connecticut accountable as well. So at my last Board of Ed meeting, which was about a month ago, because August they didn't have a state Board of Ed meeting, I requested that the State Department of Education should have on their website every single memorandum of agreement. Because the ultimate authority for all of our children falls on the shoulders of the State Department of Education. The statute and the Supreme Court ruled that the State Department of Education cannot delegate its responsibility to all of our children. There's over 500,000 plus students in the state of Connecticut, and the State Department of Education is legally responsible for them. So they cannot delegate this responsibility. They need to want to know what is happening to our babies, especially when you're putting handcuffs on them, as young as 5 and 4 years old.
And this is why this conversation is so important that we get it out to parents, because every parent doesn't know, like they don't know that there's such a list of MOUs. And I definitely did not know and surprised to find out that when I see Hartford, that specific assignments are unclear. I'm definitely going to be addressing this with the superintendent, the chairman of education, and the chief of police for the city of Hartford to find out, okay, exactly what does that mean? When you say unclear and it says a copy is attached somewhere, well then why isn't it right here? So that every parent should be issued a copy so that they know if their child should happen, to get into some kind of mishap that involves a police officer or a security guard, that they know what those responsibilities are, the child's responsibilities are, and what the parent responsibilities are. I think that Terry has something to say.
Right. I also wanted to say that each school is responsible for having on their site a school safety plan.
Yes.
And if they don't have the school safety plan, then they're not compliant as far as providing a safe, fair, and appropriate public education. And so if we're parents and we feel unsafe, the first thing we need to do is go to the administrator and request a copy of the school safety plan.
Right. Let's not even talk about school safety plan, because in the school safety plan, my granddaughter, and we created legislation in the city of Hartford. It's called the Desharia Gaynor anti-bullying legislation in 2017 because of the school safety plan. So should a child hit you and you hit the child back that hit you, both of y'all gonna get punished. So I'm like, well, wait a minute, well, what are we teaching? That's not retaliation, that's self-defense. So self-defense is against the law in the Hartford school system. I don't know about other school systems, and I have had this conversation with them, and I'm gonna say it, and I say it loud, I say it clear. My children are not punching bags. They will defend themselves. And then you can call me every single day, because that's not gonna happen.
And that's
you
important.
Can't be teaching children to be victims.
And you said your child was bullied. My daughter was on the honor roll for her entire school, and in the 12th grade, she was being accosted by someone while the person was on crutches. And she ended up having a fight, and they said to me, your daughter was in a physical altercation, and she didn't initiate it. And so they punished the other person more than her, but they still ended up punishing her. Even though security, the cameras already proved that she was sitting down, and somebody pulled her out of her chair. She just came out the victor. But she ended up getting punished because she responded. And that, to me, that is unfair, because even out of reflexes, some people just grab another person,
It was interesting. My daughter's case, it was a white girl involved. She's nowhere in the record. And we had a film of it. So I don't.
How can they document the person fighting nobody?
Exactly. And see, and that's going to be important because it affects their future. It really affects. I don't mean don't hold our children accountable. I'm a tough love. It ain't always easy. It's not easy. And I'm not saying your kids are perfect.
I went through the same thing with Nas and AF. It was a kid that gave him a lighter on the bus. Wow. Yeah, and he struck the lighter, but you only punished him. But I'm like, why is the kid bringing a lighter to school? Why is he bringing it on the bus? Why is just Nas punished? He brought the lighter on the bus. You know what I'm saying? And it was just, he got penalized and not the other kids.
So I have a question. Once the discipline has been decided and handed out, is there a process in place to appeal or ask that discipline be rescinded? Because I've done it. Yes, there is in Hartford, because I've had it done as well.
In my time, there was not.
Okay.
There was absolutely
and there's nothing?
There is nothing. And I asked, and even when I spoke to the superintendent, because if it wasn't for Senator Winfield of New Haven, I wouldn't even know this existed. Because I asked him, what would he do in my place? He said, number one, like Arjo said, my child would not be a punching bag. And I would have went to the chief of police and asked for a memorandum of understanding. I said, what is that? And then I went to my chief of police, and he didn't know what I was talking about. But this goes even further, because we're going to be mindful of time, and we will revisit this because we have other guests. But one thing I would say is we also need to be thinking about racial profiling. Because if a police department has a documented history of racial profiling, What makes you think they wouldn't be profiling in our hallways?
Right.
And so there needs to be something that when there are school-based arrests by local police departments that have a history of racial profiling, there needs to be a third-party entity that reviews the school-based arrest. Because if you are biased in the community, you are not going to tell me your bias ends when the same demographics that are in the hallways are in their communities. Because if we're going to dismantle, they always talk about, the school to prison pipeline, it's a real thing. But we must remember, those pipes of that pipeline are rusted shut. They are rusted, welded, taped, whatever you can think. And they have no intention of being dismantled unless we hold systems accountable. We have law after law after law, but there is no enforcement of law. But again, it's still a responsibility for parents to handle their business for their children. Because there's some bad stuff that's coming. There's some bad stuff that is here. We had to veto, we had to have a press conference because there was a law that got under the radar last year that teachers had the sole power to remove a child indefinitely. No due process, no IEPs, no PPTs, nothing. Governor Malloy, whether we agree with him or not, vetoed it. He made the right call. They were having a veto override session, and we had to have a press conference in front. And it's sad to say, it was a unanimous vote to give them sole power. Unanimous.
That was prior to the press conference.
Prior to the press conference. And then when it ended, it was 14-17. They didn't win. That's why I'm saying we have to be on our game. That's what's coming. And then as you're about to hear, I just learned about all these empty seats. So we're going to transition now. Because I've always heard the Hartford Parent University President Billy Arseniegas talk about some empty seats in Hartford, in your magnet schools. But because I don't have choice in Meriden or magnet schools that I know of, matter of fact, I think they will burn themselves down before they allow parents to have a choice, which is not their choice anyway, because they're not kids. But I'm just saying. So I heard there were empty seats, and that these seats were being left empty, even if you had kids that wanted to attend in the neighborhood. So I said, that must be a Hartford thing. I'm just going to stay home. I don't understand it. And the people are going to have to rise in Hartford for themselves. Then I just learned that just last year, that law went statewide. And the way the law reads is, in Hartford, 75%, someone correct me, that's why we're going to talk to LaShawn Robinson, which is a plaintiff of the Robinson versus Wenzel. And by the way, who knows who our commissioner of the state, but homework time, if you don't want to write it down, who's the commissioner of the State Department of Education? All right. So you'll get a free pass on Friday before Labor Day. This is the only pass you're going to have. It is Commissioner Wenzel. And the reason why that's important to know is because the lawsuit is Robinson versus Wenzel. And Wenzel is the commissioner of the State Department of Education. And the reason why this is important, because she's supposed to represent every single child in Connecticut. And so, but yet she supported these racial quotas that we're about to talk about in our schools. And so from what I'm understanding, and again, we're about to jump back in and I'm going to turn it over to the lawyers of Pacific so that we can talk about the lawsuit and why I'm concerned for Meriden. Number one, I'm concerned because it's no longer Hartford. It's the whole state. And number two, I have a problem with anybody telling little black and brown children that I can't let you in here to an empty seat is because it's only reserved for white children and Asian children, which sets the tone that our kids have to be in proximity of white and Asian kids to learn.
So Gwen, you need to break down that scenario that we talked about earlier with the Stop and Shop model, because that will let people know
just how
exactly what you're talking about.
So when I heard about this lawsuit yesterday, y'all, we were traumatized, okay? I just want you to know this in the extent, and then I'm going to turn it over to our leadership of Pacific Legal to explain this in terms. So when I heard this, I thought about going to a grocery store. So I need you all to use your imagination skills. Do you use your imagination in class, young lady? So we're going to use our imagination as grown folk. I want everybody to envision You going, because we're all of color here, except for our team. We love you. You're part of the family. You're part of the family.
You're right.
So I want all of you imagine that you are going to Stop and Shop. You got Stop and Shop in Hartford? What's your grocery store? Stop and Shop. We all going
to. Just imagine.
you going to the store, but I want y'all to go to Stop and Shop on this one. You go to the Stop and Shop. You step on you know how you step on the mat and the door open? So the door open, but someone stops you and say, no, ma'am, we've met our racial quota for the day. We already got 75% of the black folk in here. We got to leave the rest of this for white and Asian families.
Sounds like a Jim Crow law.
It sure do. And then he says, I said, but are any white folk, did they come in? No, they don't come to the store. They got big Y. And so,
but there's food on the shelf.
But there's food on the shelf. So you're willing, and you know, they're saying, we're willing to let all this food go sour. Right. Because you can't go here, because this is saved for this rest of this bread is saved for suburban white families.
That are not coming to the store.
That are not coming to the store. Okay? I just want y'all to know how serious this thing is. It makes so not sense that I'm still not going to believe it. And that is why I'm going to turn it over to the lawyers of Robinson, which is who we have here, Hartford mom, LaShawn Robinson, who is also the plaintiff in this lawsuit. And we all need to be concerned about this because it sounds like we going back to 1950s and 40s, and we're just not doing that. We have to ensure that every child has access to a quality school or educational experience, whatever that is, whatever color you are. And you're not about to tell these babies that they're the wrong color to get access to a seat that is available for them to go to. So with that being said, I would like to turn it over to the lawyers of Pacific Legal. And again, thank you for supporting our families of Connecticut.
Thank you, Gwen. I think that example is hilarious, but it's also very on point. But now we're not talking about food, we're talking about Hartford's children.
Thank you.
That are being denied opportunities in the schools because they have the wrong skin color. I think before we talk, Nyesha and Jalea and Naz were stars in a video that we'd like to show that explains this issue. And then once that video's done, then we can jump right in.
All right. Scott, drum roll.
Lights.
Lights. Okay, is it working? Is it on?
Yeah, you did the light guy.
Okay, because I don't know where the light switch is. I don't know where the power button is. It's Friday. It's next day weekend.
Oh, that's weird.
Ooh, it's sure dark.
I made bubble like that. I'm gonna make myself fly one day, telling you, without a plane.
Why they were just hugging each other? They was running each other. It was like slow motion. They was like, "Oh, Jeffrey, Sarah."
Oh my gosh.
That's the house that burned down.
Oh.
Yeah. I'm glad the people was all right though.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I was thinking about doing like salad.
Even the Wi-Fi. Only certain people can have access to it.
And highway barbecue wings, like what Alex said, he's on the wings.
Yeah, but what did you do last year?
Last year we did just Hartford. I grew up in Hartford all my life. People think that the education system here is really great because we have a lot of schools in Hartford like Trinity and University of Hartford, St. Joseph. But we are a community of lots of failing schools, 21 in fact. The education system here is really harming our children and not helping our children. The first thing I heard about it was a court case going on in Connecticut. Saying that they wanted all children to have equity and learn in the classroom with kids from the suburbs and come into our community, and we go into theirs to learn. So that was my first initial opening to the magnet school. At that time, I didn't know how important education was. I didn't get help in school, so I just ended up dropping out. My parents didn't know at first. I would just hide, and they would think I was in school. That, I felt like the school gave up on me, so let me just give up too. So I got pregnant with my son.
An ally has been slain. You now. Your right tower is under attack.
He begged me to get him out of the school that he was in. Begged and pleaded. So I ended up doing that and put him back in the neighborhood school. Doing fine at first. And he started slacking off, thinking like, oh, the work is way too boring. I did this already. So Gerard went from having really good grades to all Fs. Missing out the 3 rounds of the lottery really made a difference in how Gerard felt about himself emotionally, how it kind of caused him to be depressed and stuff. Eventually, he gave up. A lot of times we have schools right here, the magnet schools in Hartford, with empty seats because kids from the suburbs, maybe their families don't want them to come in. So those seats just stay empty no matter what. Even if I want Gerard to have a seat, he cannot get in unless they come in too. In the neighborhood school, we have really bright children or children that just need a chance. Those kids could be sitting here getting educated instead of in the 21 neighborhood schools that are failing. It's like Connecticut says you have to have a white peer in a classroom for a black kid to get educated. But it's also upsetting that a lot of people in the community don't know that. They don't know that them seats are empty. They think that they're full. I do feel angry about it. They should have the same opportunity other kids in the suburbs have. It shouldn't be like that. It's just, to me, it's really disgusting.
Drink a sip of water, because you need a sip of water for that. Because if there were no kids in here, we were talking about other sipping, but the kids need his water. So, LaShawn, don't mess me up here. I thank you and all the other plaintiffs for your courage, because I am sure it's not easy feeling alone in the fight. But one thing I will say, when we win this, all children will benefit. All. Because at the point we start denying kids in 2018 access to a quality education, to safe classrooms, great teachers, beautiful buildings. And I heard Hartford spent hundreds of millions for these buildings. Just to be turned away because you are the wrong color, we're not going to do this as a state. No. And so we as a state need to say this. But it's going to be on every parent, and not just Black parents, not just Hispanic parents. This is in all of our self-interest. And this goes to the taxpayers out there. Many people say they don't have children, but you pay for these schools. You got to want to know that every child is going to have a fair chance to be a productive citizen, be able to be hired so that we can continue to build strong communities. And so we're not going to keep spending more for prisons than classrooms. So it's on us.
Yes, ma'am. I also want to say that initially when I heard of the Chef versus O'Neill situation, when I heard that the case was won, my intention was, ooh. I'm like, who done called me? She recorded me trying to say,
no, it's live. It's live.
It's live, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Share it.
So I was under the impression that the education will be brought to the local schools, and as like Walmart, that all the schools would look exactly the same, regardless of where you lived in the state. But when they start pulling the families and the students that were high achievers out of the city schools 15 years ago, I mean, I started really like understanding that this was what was going to happen. I wanted to know how many families, how many parents they brought together when they put the magnet school model in place.
Right. So let's hear, because one thing we've discussed, so we did a meeting yesterday in New Haven, but because now that this law has expanded statewide, they've started attacking magnets across the state. And I'm going to say attacking, because there was a school that was closed down in New Haven. Again, I'm going to let the lawyers speak to this so that it's in context. So this is bigger than Chef. So we're not going to make this about Chef. We're going to make this about equity and education justice for all children. So with that being said, I would like to continue, if you can continue, Attorney.
Sure, thank you. I also get emotional when I see the video like LaShawn does. So let's talk a little bit about the history of why this is happening, and I'll talk about how it's expanded statewide and what happened in New Haven a little bit. So you're right, we don't want to mention Chef, but it does start with Chef. And in 1989, there was a lawsuit with great intentions. Connecticut, or Hartford in particular, was failing its students and students of color. And in 1989, an ambitious lawsuit was brought with Elizabeth Horton Chef as the lead plaintiff, and she had a great vision in mind to ensure that all children in Hartford received the equal education they're guaranteed by the Connecticut Constitution. And in 1996, the Connecticut Supreme Court agreed with her and agreed with that lawsuit and required Hartford schools to reform. And immediately, a number of things happened. One, they created magnet schools. Two, they created charter schools. They created a voluntary choice program where when suburban schools will allow some inner city kids in, that they can transfer there. So they did a number of things. And most of these are great, and we don't oppose them. There are a litany of other things, funding things, and teacher requirements. Fast forward a little bit, and one of the things that they did, so the magnet schools were successful. They were doing a better job of educating Hartford's kids than the neighborhood schools. But Hartford was growing increasingly, just demographically, more racially segregated. There are, by far, Hartford is a community of Black and Hispanic families. And that meant that the magnet schools were also becoming racially isolated. So the Chef plaintiffs, in an effort to combat that, said, well, one solution is we can require that these schools maintain 25% of their student population as white. So they put this requirement into all magnet schools in the Hartford area, and you can understand why that intention was good, right? They wanted to feel the fulfillment of their lawsuit and ensure racially diverse schools. But what the effect of that requirement was to do is to, when schools can't meet their 25% quota, they have to leave those seats empty. So you have thousands of empty seats in Hartford's magnet schools, and you have tens of thousands of students that are attending failing neighborhood schools in Hartford that can't get into, are by law forbidden from getting into those magnet schools because they have the wrong color skin. And so you have students like Gerard and our other 7 plaintiffs that have children, Black and Hispanic families that have children in these Hartford schools that want the same opportunity that white kids would have. The white kids do have. If LaShawn was white, her kids would be in magnet school.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, the racial quota that was added on to the good things that the Chef lawsuit did is now perversely affecting Black and Hispanic families in Hartford. They're denying them the equal opportunity to attend the schools that are succeeding and forcing them to go into schools that are not only failing, but are now more racially segregated than ever.
I have a question because I work with the board and provide you with a letter that asks you to mark off your ethnicity. And first they want to know the color of your skin. So my question is, as a Hispanic parent, I might have a white daughter and a black daughter. And my white daughter's got blonde hair and my black daughter has got kinky hair. So I'm going to put down that she's white, right?
They both are.
Right. But then when you mark Latino, automatically it eliminates her from having the opportunity to go. So would you, as a parent now, put down that she's a Latino even though she doesn't speak Spanish because her skin is white? It makes us have to think to the second and third power. And as a former school employee, it made us have to even ask parents, what would you like for us to list your child as? Because when your child is born, the child is white as snow and it grows up to be browner. You know what I'm saying? So it's like I was put in a position, but I could also understand where a parent would even just mark, yeah, she's white, because she's literally white.
But I will tell you, as a child care provider, I did child care for 12 years. And so the state would come in and they would actually put on like, well, how many children you have that are white, how many are Latino, how many are, black. So all the black and Jamaican kids were considered as black. And I had 2 Hispanic kids, dark as the rest of them, they put them down as white.
Wow.
Yeah.
My friend told me the state, when she worked for UConn, do the same thing. If you're Hispanic,
they count them as white.
And see, what makes this interesting? Go
They
ahead.
eliminate that right once you get into the educational system, because then they're going to go at the fact that even though you're white, you're still Hispanic. There's one aspect that we did not, I don't think we discussed it in the last 2 days, and this is the trauma effect that it has on the students and their families and their parents. Because this is trauma.
Yeah.
This is racial discrimination. Right now, we don't even have enough social workers to handle the traumas that they go through on a regular basis. So for anyone, powers that be, on the state level, Hartford level, wherever it may be, to take a position that is going to induce trauma on children and families should be somehow criminal.
Yes. And what expands that conversation, which I'm about to look up and pull up the bill again, because it went from just being a Hartford issue to a state issue. And so, if Attorney, could you speak to what happened in New Haven? Because it matters. Because soon as the law went into effect in 2017, you tried to penalize and had a school closed, penalize in excess of $100,000 in fines. And this is not a school's fault. You can't make a suburban parent come to your district. This is parents' rights. This is parents' choice. And my concern is we are penalizing. That's like me penalizing you for what I do in my house. And you're going to be like, I ain't never stepped foot in your house.
So when our kids are educated in the suburbs, the money from Hartford goes out there to educate that child. They haven't made a contract with any of those people who are receiving money from the city of Hartford that says, you have to send me 25% of your kids because you're getting some of my people. They have not made that dual relationship. And it should be both ways. Because if I'm accepting your children, you should be bringing me some of yours. And I used to be a project concern student. We never saw those kids coming in, but we were going there.
I just want to say on the point of trauma, I am living a traumatized life.
I'm with it, girl.
Because my son attended the Martin Luther King School. He's right now in transition, attending Rawson for a year, and he's going to be returning to Dr. Martin Luther King as a middle school student. Every day, I question myself, am I doing the right thing as a parent? Because I cannot afford to send my son to a magnet school. I'm an immigrant, I'm just in college, getting my act together. And if he is too far away, I cannot be there for him the way I want to be there for him. If there's a PTO meeting or parent-teachers conference, how will I get there? The after-school programs, he would be going to a magnet, but he still would not have access to character development and enrichment programs because he has to hop on the school bus to come back. And every single day of my life, this is my struggle as a parent. And as you know, my fight has been getting neighborhood schools renovated and improved. I am very much active in that role because you cannot tell me as a Caribbean woman that my son can only progress if he's sitting next to a white child. Because, you know, it just doesn't work. In the Caribbean, we are all mixed, and school is based on academics, not on your skin color. So all the prestigious schools, you want to go to a prestigious school, you will study and get that grade. You know, it's not like you slide through. So this whole scenario does not sit well with me at all.
I think that's a very important point. LaShawn shared something that she called me up, I don't know, a couple months ago, and she was debating whether, you know, maybe a magnet school wasn't the right choice for her child. And I think that this is something that I think Gwen would agree with. Ultimately, the parents should have the choice to make that choice, whether a neighborhood school is best for their child or whether a magnet school is best for their child. And we certainly are fully in favor of that choice. But what restricts that choice is when the state says Black and Hispanic families have fewer choices.
Right.
You don't even get the option of sending your kid to a magnet school because they have the wrong skin color.
You should be able to go to a magnet school right here in Hartford. You should be able to go to a neighborhood school with the same equitable access to high quality education. I don't have to go to Avon or anywhere else to get that. I want that right here in Hartford. And we deserve it.
Right. And this is important to note, and I want all of us to remember this. So behind me, it says election.
Yes.
This is election year. We just had primaries August 14th. And why we need to know why that matters, because the very people that are supposed to be representing our voice darn near voted unanimous for this thing to be state. So I just pulled up the voting record, and I want us to be very clear with this. In the Senate, and this is why I don't understand, and we got a Black and Puerto Rican caucus. We're one of the few states still with an African American commission and a Black and Puerto Rican caucus. And it was voted 29 yay, 3 nay,
Shame.
and 4 absent.
It is disgraceful.
29 yay.
It is disgraceful.
And you got to wonder, why would someone vote that it is okay to leave a seat empty? We couldn't even approve as a state budget. They eliminated many summer youth employment because we didn't have a budget. Babies who needed to work to help their parents, to buy uniforms to help themselves, couldn't get a job. And the very people is telling us that if we don't have white kids in our classroom, now does this mean this is about black and white? Like we don't love, we got friends of all races, and this is not about black and white per se. This is about saying you can't make suburban parents come to your schools or any school.
Right.
You can't make me go to Greenwich if I got a good school right here.
Right.
And then on top of that, you're going to penalize Greenwich because I don't want to bring my behind up there?
No.
That don't make any sense.
But in essence, what you're saying is that they can't do that. No, you should say they should not do it because that's exactly what is happening.
Right.
So it ain't like they can't do it. They are doing it.
I think that the model for every school should be exactly the same across the state.
That's right.
And just like Walmart, you can go in there and you know that's on that aisle, and the produce is to the left, and the pharmacy is in the middle, and the law and stuff is over there at the other end. It should be carbon copies. I should be able to go in every school in the state of Connecticut and see the same type of education being offered and the same types of services being offered.
So as we think about this, so it is 6:23, I want to be mindful of everyone's time. So the question becomes, what are we prepared to do about it? I don't know if y'all saw the movie Untouchable, but I remember, what was the guy with the accent? He says, what are you prepared to do? So that is the question on the table, that not us just in this room, but everyone in the state of Connecticut, especially New Haven and Hartford, because it's spearheaded here.
Yes.
And so they've used a model that has denied their own children access to a quality education, and you done made it a statewide thing? That you just gave carte blanche to discriminate for the color of our skins. That can't be okay. It's not okay. It's not okay. And unless we do something, it will continue to be okay.
I think one of the things, before you get in, I think that one of the things that we all should be willing to do is educate other parents.
That's right.
Probably need to educate some of our state senators and state reps and principals and other individuals to what this actually is. Like, never mind, take the names of the individuals away from it. Just state the facts. That would you support a law that says if you didn't have a green child, they couldn't go to the school because they got enough green kids already in the building? So would you support that? That's what I'm saying. So what would you do? Or if a child doesn't live in this location, even though the school is right next door, those seats will remain empty because we no longer letting polka dot kids in. That's ridiculous. You know, and I'm saying that because all our kids are like mulattoes. They're mongrels. Like my family, we got everybody in it. So certain members of my family could go to the school and other members can't. That's ridiculous. Children are children. Doesn't matter what color they are. Doesn't matter where they are. And it's more ridiculous to me that you would actually leave a seat empty than to let a child who live in that same municipality attend that school. That's more ridiculous than all of it.
Well, that's why I want you to speak. But can you if you hold one moment, please? Just a moment. No, it's okay, because I want to talk about New Haven. Because if we don't show the impact of this, it'll be looking like, oh, this is not really that bad. But can you please talk about what just happened to New Haven?
That's where I was going to go. And before I get there, I echo that. I think the strongest thing that we can do here is raise awareness for this issue because it's so obviously immoral and wrong, but people just don't know. So I'm going to tell you what's happened in New Haven and what is bound to happen in other schools across the state, but awareness is necessary. New Haven. So this magnet school quota had only applied to Hartford for the last decade, and it had kept Black and Hispanic kids out of Hartford schools. And in 2017, they decided to expand this law statewide. Immediately, the following year, a magnet school in New Haven that was 93% Black, was well loved by the community, was doing a great job educating the kids, was threatened with fines because it couldn't maintain its 25% white person quota. It was threatened with fines.
Although the kids were being educated.
Parents loved it, kids loved it, it was a great school. And then, like many cities do, New Haven faced a budget crisis. They said, well, they're fining this school. We're not going to get the funds to educate the kids if we keep this school open. So we're going to close it down because that school could not meet its racial quota. So they closed down a school that was successful, was loved by the community, just because it had too many Black kids in it.
Tell me what that means about value. They're willing to shut a school down before I educate your Black and brown children.
How dare you?
And this was a STEM school, if I understand. We were taught as parents the importance of science, technology, engineering, mathematics. They're saying, parents, you got to understand the limit your child, or the dreams or the sky that your child can do. Oh, you got too many Black kids, so we will shut you down because you don't have white children.
And now that, remember that we make note of it, that it's only the state of Connecticut. So we've been doing this for over 30-something years, and no other state has adopted it.
In this country.
Something has to be wrong.
Nobody in the country has a law like this but us. So, Miss Athena, you have a question.
No.
No?
I have.
She like, can't believe it.
No, I have an ask.
Okay.
And the ask is to every legislator.
That's right. Wow.
That is a public servant that was elected by the people to serve the people. That either you start reading what's before you and looking for the impact, whether negative or positive, that it is going to have on your constituents. It is your responsibility to educate yourself before you vote on something. No one goes to the polls without knowing a name of who they're voting for. So they have no business.
That's right.
Sitting at a table anywhere and voting on something, and they haven't even bothered to read what they're voting on. That is my ask. That is one ask. The other ask is for parents.
That's right.
I'm going to say this again. God knows I love you. You know what? You're going to win. That's all I'm going to say. You're going to win.
That's right.
I'm claiming that right now. I'm claiming that victory. You're going to win. But parents are going to have to step up to the plate.
That's right.
We cannot continue to beg parents to take an active role, to understand what's going on, to pay attention to the laws on the books, to challenge your legislators. Know who they are. You voted for them, hold them accountable. Get your children educated by any means necessary.
That's right.
So you're talking about, legislators answering to their constituents, that we also have to be reminded that there are 169 towns in the state of Connecticut. There are 8 urban towns. So those 8 urban towns are asking those other 161 towns to do the right thing by us. So it cannot be us against them. It has to be children, period.
Period.
I mean, period. Their children, our children, everybody, just children, period. So every child, the government mandates that you send your child to their building to get an education. So we should mandate the government to make sure that each of our children are getting an adequate, education.
Right. So there's one thing I want to put on the table as we think about solutions, right? Because we know the issue, so we ain't even got to go into the problem, right? The question becomes, what are we prepared to do? So that means solution. One of the solutions is, in this legislative session, 2018, shout out to Senator Gary Winfield, for ensuring that there was a new law passed called, it's like a racial equity impact law. And what this law is supposed to do is, before a bill is passed into law, a lawmaker can request to have it checked for equity, for racial impact. And so if it disproportionately targets one group versus the other, then it shouldn't become law. So this law that passed in 2017, that clearly I just have to assume nobody read from our community, that it is Public Act 17172. 17, which is the year. So when you see a public act, the first number will always be the year it was passed. And then the suffix is the 17172. Which originated from House Bill 7201. And the reason why I said this is because this morning when I woke up still traumatized about this in the grocery store, because I'm just trying to think this is not real, that we're asking that there be a racial impact analysis of this law. Because if they do what they were elected to do, you would know it would disproportionately target black and brown children, and you will repeal the law. I'm not asking you to reform anything, and none of us should be asking them to reform it. We want to repeal it because every child deserves access to a free school. To a quality school. And until we demand this, laws like this will come in force. I saw a movie says wicked this way come. I am traumatized by this. Something wicked is coming unless we say something about this. So we have the power as people. Election is November 6th, and I want to be clear. None of these lawmakers should be able to ask you for a vote until they tell you why they voted yes and what are they prepared to do about it to remedy it. You can't kiss my baby on the forehead and have a photo op and then you don't care if they're educated or incarcerated. I prefer the previous one, educated, because we put a lot into education, into incarceration. So again, that's one request that I'm putting on the table. One action that if we work collectively, that we are asking for a racial impact analysis of this new law that passed last year that almost crippled, to me, New Haven. And then we need to have it repealed. Number two, September 5th. I know it's around the corner, y'all, and I know y'all gonna be getting over Labor Day. But September 5th is the next State Board of Education meeting. And the reason why that meeting matters is because they have the ultimate responsibility for all of our children in the whole state, in every one of those districts. At the State Board of Education meeting, they are located at 450 Columbus Boulevard. And I'm asking you, I'm not supposed to be begging other parents to work for their own children. But if you love your babies, or if you love your neighbor's babies, if you love your grandbabies, or foster children, or adoptive children, please take the time on September 5th to go up there and oppose this. At 9, so the meeting starts at 9:30. But we are holding a press conference at 9 o'clock, but we'll share that information on social media. We will be sharing it on the Connecticut Parents Union website, and we'll make sure that this information gets out to you. But please, if we love our babies like we say we do, because you got them ready, you went and got your book bag from the book bag fair for back to school, you done made little pigtails, little braids for your babies, little Johnny has their shiny clothes on for the first day of school. But some of these babies are going back to school that don't love your babies. And you got some great magnet schools in Hartford, and we got great magnet schools across the state of Connecticut, and no child should be told that you cannot enter these doors because you are the wrong color. We're not doing Jim Crow today in 2018. And until we own that space, we just not doing it.
I saw a really cute article. It said nothing should be separated by color except clothes.
Hello.
Like, that's the most wonderful, most simplest thing that I've ever seen.
Well, tell my kids that. They put bleach in the color clothes. You need to tell that thing. I'm still traumatized. They need to be counseled. I know that's the kids in white clothes.
That's a whole nother subject.
So those are the 2 action steps. So any questions? Yes.
Lady Cardulis, parent, resident, longtime proponent of what's been going on in the city of Hartford. I've been talking about the disparities between the magnet and the neighborhood schools since Adamowski first walked into Hartford. And we saw this coming.
Yes.
We saw this coming. And as a former head custodian who never worked in the magnet schools, my kids went to Fisher. But I was at HTLA, Burns, and Bulkley, and it was so horrible and so terrible in these neighborhood schools. You know, and I had worked at Burns, and it used to flood every time it rained, like whitewater rapids on the main floor. And I was the former union president for the custodians, so they called me at Mary Hooker. And I went over to Mary Hooker, and I saw they had a pond and a waterfall, and butterfly, aviary, whatever, trout. And I'm like, wow. So at Burns, neighborhood kids got mice, silverfish, cockroaches, water, mold, mildew. And I was so upset when I went to Mary Hooker. And I'm like, this got to stop. And like you said, if you believe in your neighbor, because that's what we're supposed to be doing, is believing in our neighbor. And if we care about our neighbor and their children, then we should have been saying, you know, really putting it on Front Street a long time ago. Because you look at how much money the school district gets, and look what our children are getting and being subjected to. All the parents.
As a parent, when my kids got perfect attendance, they're on the honor roll, they got good grades, they're nice people, they're really nice people, and they're getting refused year after year. After a while, I just stopped getting them involved in the process altogether because you guys can be educated exactly where you are. You see what I'm saying? Because once you, after a couple of years, and you start seeing, I have 7 kids, and one of my kids got accepted to a magnet school. And after that, I didn't apply because I didn't want everybody else to be all upset.
I know sibling preference didn't work for me. My son went to the Breakthrough Academy, and I caught wind that Adamowski was upset with me about what I was saying. So sibling preference didn't work for me. When Annie Fisher opened back up, I said, this is my neighborhood school. My kids were there when we closed it, when we were a blue ribbon school through the federal government. Said, we're going to go back. I didn't even fill out an application. I'm like, my kids are going to walk literally right around the corner from their house and go back to Annie Fisher School.
And now you can't even go across the street to a magnet. So I don't understand that. So I would like to go back to the attorneys for a minute. So because we're figuring out how to bring awareness, and our goal as a community is to also band together, because there are people that can help us but won't take the risk without some covering. So we got to do our part. That's number one. Sad to say, that's the reality. So what are the next steps? Can you help us with timelines so that we can stay alert, stay vigilant, and then I'm sure we'll work on questions that, like frequently asked questions, so people have questions about the lawsuit. So it's always important to we're not asking parents to just believe us because we're saying it.
Right.
Get to know the information for yourself so you can make informed decisions. But whatever your decisions is, one of them should not be denying children an access to a quality school because of the color of their skin. Like you said, it should be just about separating clothes by color, not children. And we just not going to be that state, which is the Constitution state, which is one of the wealthiest states in the nation. We're not about to do that. So, sir, can you tell us what the next steps are based on what you're doing?
Yeah, we filed our lawsuit in February with LaShawn as the lead plaintiff and 7 other Hartford families. So we are only challenging the quotas at Hartford magnet schools. One thing, before I finish your question, one thing that we are interested in is we are looking for other brave families like LaShawn, brave mothers and fathers that live outside of Hartford that want to change the statewide mandate for racial quotas. So if you know of anybody that fits that bill, please have them contact me. I have cards here that I can hand out. Actually, I'll pass them.
But why should there be quotas at all? You said change the quota mandate. Why should there be quotas?
Eliminate. Eliminate. That's better said. Not change. We are seeking to have them declared unconstitutional. And so our aim, we are challenging 2 things. And most of the time here is spent discussing the quota. That's the most easily understood. It is unconstitutional. We are challenging it as violating LaShawn and these other parents' rights under the United States Constitution. What we are also challenging, which is related to the quota, but it's the lottery process itself. Yes. How the lottery works today is to give preferences to kids in white neighborhoods, to give preferences to kids with certain skin colors. So in addition to the quota, they're giving preferences to all these other kids. So the Black and Hispanic families in Hartford don't even have a fair shake at the lottery. Yes. They're being punished at that stage, and then they're being punished at the stage of capping the enrollment at these schools anyway. So we're challenging both of those things as violating the Constitution. And so the lawsuits, unfortunately, don't happen overnight. They are a long process. And we have our first hearing in court on October 16th. My colleague Wen Kong will be arguing that motion before the court. I'll be here as well. And so there are 3 parties in the lawsuit. There's us, the plaintiffs. There's the state of Connecticut and the governor and the board, Hartford board, various government entities. And there's also recently the chef plaintiffs intervened in our lawsuit to defend the quota. So these parties are asking for different things. We are asking for the case to move forward in federal court so we can defend our clients' federal rights to equal protection. The state of Connecticut is saying, no, we think that this case should go back to the Connecticut Supreme Court, and the Connecticut Supreme Court should get to decide whether what we're doing is proper. And the chef plaintiffs are saying, no, this should stay in the Connecticut trial court because we're still trying to figure out what the proper remedy is here, and we don't want the federal court getting involved.
Well, kids are being punished.
Okay, yeah, you can figure it out, but leave our kids out. That's all I'm saying.
They've been figuring it out for 30 years, and we believe the time has come for the federal court to say enough is enough, and we need to protect constitutional rights. So that decision, that decision of where this case belongs will be decided, well, it won't be decided that day, but the hearing on which side is going to win that battle will be argued on October 16th.
Yeah.
So you're all welcome to come to that. It's a public hearing. It's at the Federal District Court in Connecticut, in Hartford. And we would welcome all the support we could get.
Who else is opposing this lawsuit? Because it's important for us to understand where we are, because it's going to divide the state, and we have to figure it out. So who else is opposing this, who's supporting the racial quota, which means they're opposing this lawsuit?
So it's interesting. We're suing the state of Connecticut because they adopted the law that put this in, but they are obviously supporting the law, but they're also thinking that they kind of want to get out from underneath it as well. So that's why they want the Connecticut Supreme Court to kind of let them off the hook. They want the Connecticut Supreme Court to say these racial quotas aren't required anymore. What the chef plaintiffs, who are represented by the national outfits of the NAACP and the ACLU, as they are arguing that these quotas should stay in place, that this is the model for diversity nationwide. Hartford has shown how it is successful, would be their argument, and we need to expand it. They were behind the push to move these to a statewide, from Hartford to statewide Connecticut. So they are in support of the quotas. The state of Connecticut's kind of wishy-washy. They're not really, they just want to be told what to do, essentially. And then we are there opposing that and supporting the Hartford parents' rights to equal protection under the federal Constitution.
So I'm going to let Terry speak in a minute, but one of the things that they need to be made known of how many magnet schools are being threatened to be demagnetized because they're not meeting those quotas.
Right. That's why there are open seats, right? These magnet schools leave seats open so they won't get demagnetized. They have to operate at 60% capacity, because if they operated at 100% capacity, they can't fill those seats with enough white and Asian kids to meet their quota. If they don't meet their quota, they're demagnetized. So these seats are left open so that they can maintain their magnet status. In the meantime, thousands of Hartford's black and brown kids are left at the doorstep, not able to get in because they have the wrong skin color.
Well, it seems unrealistic because in the city of Hartford, 90% of the kids or more are of color.
Yeah, we're 90%
It's unrealistic to actually
90%.
make this law apply to Hartford initially, because the ratios would automatically make the schools fail in a few years. Or when they looked like they were prospering, they would fail just because of ratios. And that's exactly what's falling in place now, like a domino effect.
Right, but then they're punishing the whole state. See, then they go ahead in 2017 and punish the whole state, and right out the gate. And I think you ever hear about those things when you want to send a message? So it makes me think they sent a message through New Haven that you better figure this thing out with these quotas, because this is what we're going to do. And you blame a school district, you blame the children because of a parent's right to choose. It's not that even suburban parents are bad, right? They're making a choice that I might be okay with what I got. I don't need to go to New Haven. I don't need to. Yes, sir.
Yeah, well, the New Haven, closing the Creed School is a great example of what's going to happen. The argument from the NAACP and the ACLU and the others who oppose us is that diversity benefits education. And on some level, that's true. It's good to meet people who aren't exactly like you, and you can learn from that. The problem is they're saying that diversity is more important than the education. And so they're closing the Creed School, which was 93% black and Hispanic. But that school proves that you don't need 25% white and Asian kids before black and Hispanic kids learn.
The charter school proves that too.
Right.
Charter schools in Hartford don't have the quota.
Right.
Only neighborhood.
And the article, I think it was in, I can't remember what paper it was in now, but the kids of Creed who had their school closed were saying what you were saying before, that a lot of the kids were mixed race. And so they're saying, well, they're identifying us as black or Hispanic, even though we're mixed race.
Exactly.
So the other pernicious part of this is that now you have kids thinking, well, am I white? Am I black? What am I? Instead of worried about the school.
Can I read and write, fill out an application, go to college?
It's pernicious all
And
the
my
way
God,
around.
I better not tan too much because I might be able to pass for a different nationality.
It elevates.
And so we're saying we have half-filled neighborhood schools and we gotta pull them together to, maximize on resources and etc. And that is great. But my question to those in positions of authority is that, the Hartford Public School system would say, well, we also control some magnets and we have some public schools and stuff like that. And my question is, if this is necessary here, that we need to have consolidation to make sure we have the best opportunities for our kids. When I asked the question about like the magnets and the vacant seats, I'm hearing that, that is a bigger question. If we are going through district-wide consolidations right now, this has to be on the table. And I have been saying this at different forums, and my voice is just like being pushed to the side. This needs to be part of the current conversation of education in Hartford right now. We're undergoing a district redesign. Magnet schools and what's happening has to be part of this conversation. We cannot push it aside. It is what is happening right now.
That's why I told him about JMA, because JMA, correct, will be demagnetized.
And so is CCCMA.
So this is a very critical issue for our community. And as a community advocate, I am saying that those in positions of authority really need to listen to what we are saying. Our kids are we are being shafted and pushed to the side. The magnets are now being attacked. So it's just like a whole chaotic ball going down the road.
It's the whole state, not the whole state.
When we did have our ratios in our schools where the white kids from suburbia were coming to Hartford to attend our schools, they could not participate in sports. They have to go back to their own town and go back to their own bushes, and then they couldn't get there in time to make practice.
It needs
right.
Oh boy,
So the problem that's going on with the community, it's all connected. It's all circulating.
Listen, I'm sorry, we cannot just do this and say, well, okay, we have the Board of Ed here, and we have Chef here, and we have Craig here. We need all the players at the table to sit down and realize our kids are being, we are traumatizing our children. We are traumatizing parents and families, while some sit in authority not really hearing or considering what is happening lower down the road.
So the important issue about demagnetizing, she brought that up, so it's important that we explain to our audience that the important issue about demagnetizing the school is that is going to greatly decrease the funding that goes into that school.
So it brings me back to the question of the funding. It goes back to the funding.
Imagine that.
And that great.
It's all about the color green.
Right, and that great equation, which I as a parent have no idea about, that is causing, the magnets to be better funded and this one. We need equity across the board.
That's right.
For education, for transportation, for everything for our kids.
We have a question here, then we're gonna go there. Okay,
I just thought it was funny because a lot of education and funding comes from home ownership, and that's very low in Hartford. But what's happening now is people with a lot of money that could afford to send their children out are moving into here and not paying taxes, but they're moving into these high rises that cost thousands of dollars, and that money's untaxed because they're giving all of these developers and property owners a lot of breaks and incentives.
Yes.
So, all of these people that are making more than a lot of renters in Hartford aren't contributing to all the weight that they put on the city as well.
And see, the problem with this, I would go to Lori, then Athena, is that you? So we can make sure we can maybe answer your question. Oh, okay. So go ahead, one.
Over here first, right?
Okay, go ahead. Okay.
I had a thought.
Watch out now.
She looked at her face. No poker. There's no poker face there.
They want these seats filled with white students, correct? That is the issue.
White suburban.
White suburban.
Okay, white suburban.
You can't be a white student from Hartford?
No, it can't be from here.
It has to be from home.
White suburban. Yeah.
It's certain white kids. What?
Yeah,
They can't be local kids.
Yeah, they cannot be local. And as we're talking about that, I just want to get back to one of the viewers, Cindy. She said that you all need to invite, other white parents to sit at the table. I just want to make it very clear that it was not purposely done. People were invited widely, and this is who showed up. But Cindy, I will make sure that you get the next invite.
Yeah, and you can invite anybody you want, Cindy, because we're not doing this. Okay, go ahead, you were finished. Okay.
Well, the thought was, and you just cleared it up, because my thought was, if they want white students in these seats, but you said they have to be from Suburban, yeah. That
Hartford is only 10% white, so we don't. Those mostly grown people.
Okay.
Well, that even makes it more ridiculous.
I know.
Right.
We're only 10% white.
But what I was gonna say is, if they're accepting the white students from Hartford District,
They have to be from.
they can't. Who's to say? Let's say if I was gonna enroll my child, I'll just put white on the paper. When I say by any means necessary, I mean by any means necessary. Because this.
Yeah.
And someone did that?
Yes, someone did that.
And they got in trouble
They
for
ended
it.
up saying, there's a parent that I know, and she ended up, when she went to the school, they were like, your kids are not white. And
Yeah,
I'm
they
like,
are.
Who said? How she? Yeah, they said
Right.
Rachel Dozel did it.
I'm saying they are. Yeah, they're identifying as white today.
This is not happening, y'all.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. My question is, 'cause this is not real, y'all. I don't think this something's wrong.
My question is,
What is going on?
why can't we worry about Hartford kids? Why can't we just fill up like how it used to be? Why do we have to do the magnet school or have to do the chef?
Right.
Why can't we just say, you know what, suburbs?
Thank you.
Do your own kids, just like Simsbury, just like Windsor, just like Bloomfield. You know, we can name all the towns, but then when we come to Hartford, we got this big old collage.
Right.
You know what? Forget about these other kids in the other communities.
State law, state law.
Let's think about, you know what? Then what's going to happen if we violate the state law? They're going to take the school back?
But even in
For
the
the record,
we got four zones.
You know what? Then take the funding back and let's worry about our own kids. That's where I'm at the point.
Double discrimination. For the record, today,
we got 4 zones.
the counter to this whole situation right
One
here,
conversation.
Okay, yeah, please, okay.
the counter to this whole situation right here is I want it to be known because that statement from the Connecticut State Department of Education Chairman, Alan Taylor, still does not resonate well with me at all. And he is the chairman of the State Board of Education. When they had the situation in McKinley School in Fairfield, they had empty seats that they wanted to fill. And they wanted to take children from Bridgeport School District and fill those seats. Our chairman said, it's quoted in the Connecticut Post, I believe, January 4th, 2017.
That's it.
He said, we don't want to create ghettos
in Fairfield.
In Fairfield.
See?
Let him know ghetto is a place, it ain't a person.
No, he justified it. He justified it in writing in a letter to say that his ghettos, for him, the definition was a concentration of minorities. So this concentration right here of minorities, we're ghetto. According to him, we're all ghetto. But I beg to differ.
And that's what makes
that's offensive.
So as we look at, so I want to be mindful of everyone's time, but I want to comment on this statement. So it is 6:56, and again, I want to be mindful of everyone's time sacrificed today. Why what Alan Taylor says matter?
Yes.
It says precedent to mindset.
Yes.
And that mindset makes decisions for our children in the whole state.
Exactly.
And we fought this, and we met with the Black and Puerto Rican caucus, and it was the minority Republican leadership, who, I'm not talking about parties per se, but I want to talk about reality, who we were able to get an audience with to talk about the danger of that statement. And that statement is what we're hearing right now. So what I'm trying to say is, we need to be woke. We got a charge as parents, as grandparents, as guardians of children. And we may be going through things in life, but at the point you take on the responsibility of being a parent, part of that job and both of that job is to make sure our children have access to a quality education. Right now, there is a law on the books that discriminates based on the color of people's skin. And we as parents and community leaders and taxpayers, because you're paying for it. Let's be very clear. We are paying for all of this. And so we should want to come together as a state, because if not, we will be divided. We are already a divided country by race. We have a toxic leadership that has divided us in a way that people are being harmed and killed by racism. And if we allow this to be perpetuated, these kids will grow up to hate us. They will hate us because they're saying you had a responsibility to keep us safe and you did nothing. So there's no one that can get a free pass on this. So again, as we recap, there is a State Department of Education meeting on September 5th. If you can't go, send someone. Send a dove, send a pigeon, I don't care what you got to do, but we need to show up and be present. There's public speaking. If you are not comfortable public speaking, be part of the audience, and people will speak. We're going to be working with people to do op-eds, to speak with the newspapers. We're going to be making videos. We're going to be making posters. And if you got sneakers, get your Fitbit on, because we might have to walk someplace. But at the end of the day, it has to be about the children.
And not to put a damper on the meeting, but look what time the meeting is. The meeting is at 9:30 in the morning. How many parents are at work at those times? These are the kind of deliberate things that are done. They do this on purpose because they know parents can't attend. They know you're not going to show up. Mandate that they have this after 6 o'clock when you after work, when you can meet with them, when you can have a conversation with them and tell them this stuff is deliberate. It's not by accident.
But I will say,
but do be there.
Right. Do be there. But understand this, you be there. But we also will be requesting an evening meeting with these very State Board of Education.
But they might not want to be outside after dark because minorities might be.
The ghetto is hard to say. I know that's right. So,
you should make sure there are 25% white people.
There you go. Show up. There you go.
Yeah, so close. Got to be out of Hartford by 11:30.
This ain't Hartford. This is East Hartford.
So again, be mindful. It is now 7 o'clock. And again, I thank everyone for their time sacrifice, because it is hard having children, getting out, making sure LaShawn got her babies there. I'm sure they want to be home doing whatever they want to do and not here talking about this. But it is their future. And that ain't a slogan. It ain't a Michael Jackson song, and we are the world, we are the future, because our babies are literally the future. And there's two things they can be: taxpayers or tax burdens, because they want to put them in incarceration or make them so self-sufficient on the government that make them that they're not independent thinkers or independent livers. And we have an obligation, a moral, a legal, a physical obligation to be there and stand up for our children. So September 5th is one. October 16th is the date. We want to be there for LaShawn Robinson and those other plaintiffs, because we need to send a message. When you mess with one parent and one child, you messing with all parents and all children. And as they say, please don't start nothing, won't be nothing. But you started it with our children. And our job as parents is to be there for them. So to every elected official, the Ned Lamonts of the world, and everybody else for running the office, please understand the issue, because we will be at your debates. We will be sending letters to your campaign manager. For you running for office, I don't care if you're running unopposed, you better be prepared to answer some questions about why this law is on the books and why is it okay to be on the books. So if you run unopposed, you will still be opposed by us if you don't care about our children. So go home, reflect about it, think about it, but we'll see you on the campaign trail. All right, thank you everyone for being here. My name is Gwen Sanders, and I approve that message.
Well, see, we had a lot of people watching it.